Hey everyone, this is Black Casino. Welcome back to this channel. From some of the comments that I've seen on both my YouTube videos and on Reddit, I realize that a lot of players don't know just how important a mech's hardpoint locations are, or underestimate its significance versus other mech's characteristics. A lot of players look at a mech's quirks or the amount of firepower a mech can carry, but neglect where those weapons are placed. So in this video, I hope to explain to you guys where that fits into NWO gameplay. Every time you expose yourself out of cover to take shots at the enemy, you are yourself vulnerable to return fire as well. In other words, you put yourself in a situation where you're trading damage with the enemy. If the damage you output is of better quality and or quantity than the damage you receive, then you have won that trade. Over the course of the game, if your team outtrades the enemy consistently, you can pretty much guarantee a win. After all, most MWO game modes is just an attrition match at its core, and you work to reduce the enemy's health while attempting to preserve your own. Now, if you consider what I just said, you can tell that the best kind of trade for you is if you do some amount of damage to the enemy without taking any or very minimal amount back. This is the main rationale behind using mechs with good weapon mounts. Mechs with good hardpoint locations do not need to expose as much surface area to fire all the weapons, saving you a lot of exposure time as we'll demo later on in this video. Before we see how effective good hardpoint locations are, I'll point out cases where it doesn't matter. First is in close range brawls. When you're in a brawl, you're typically face to face with an enemy, and both of your mechs are fully exposed to each other. Sustained DPS, durability quirks, and hitboxes are bigger factors in winning brawls. Another case is in lower tier games. Now, I'm not trying to take a swipe at new players, but the reality is that in the lower tiers, your enemies often haven't yet learned how to effectively take advantage of your exposure times. This may be due to poor aiming, the lack of situational awareness, unoptimized loadouts, bad positioning, or a variety of other factors. But whatever the reason is, if the enemy is not able to shoot back at you, the exposure time you save by using good hardpoints is of course irrelevant. In this clip I'm playing in my tier 4 account, I'm not really trying to shoot at the enemies as you can see, but I'm trying to show you guys what often happens in the lower tiers. The enemy Battlemaster is chain firing and spreading damage all over my armor, and the Corsair misses his dual heavy gauss shot on the assault mech at 200 meters. By the way, if you want to know why chain fire is usually bad, just ask me in the comments below. So if you're in the lower tiers right now, this kind of stuff may lead you to discount the importance of hardpoint locations, but I suggest not getting used to it. Because PSR is the equivalent to an experience rating, you'll eventually move up to tier 3, where you'll start to face players who know how to punish you for every fraction of a second you're out of cover. Let's actually do 2 demos of how much exposure time is reduced when you're piloting a mech with good hardpoint locations. The numbers I show are of course not 100% scientific. It can vary depending on player behavior, the mech's weight class, and agility stats, and so on. But I think you can get a general idea of the effects in the following comparisons. In the first demo, I'm comparing a summoner and a Hellbringer. The summoner has base acceleration and deceleration speeds of 41 and 32 kph respectively, which means it surpasses even some medium mechs in terms of agility. The Hellbringer has accel and decel rates of 22 and 25, so it's much slower than the summoner. However, the Hellbringer can place up to 6 energy weapons across its torso and head hardpoints, whereas to get that kind of firepower, the summoner needs to rely on its arm-mounted weapons. What is the net effect of the summoner's faster XL-decel, but the Hellbringer's better mounts? In this clip, I've synced the 2 videos at the point where the Atlas is first visible to both mechs. This is when, if the Atlas is an enemy mech, he can first start shooting back at you. The end of the exposure time is when the mech has gotten back to cover and the enemy is no longer visible and thus no longer able to shoot back. The exposure time for the Hellbringer is 1.6 seconds, and for the Summoner it's 3.3 seconds, which is double that of the Hellbringer. You should also be able to tell that the Summoner, at the top of its peak, is a much easier to hit target. As you can see, the effect of the higher amounts matters a lot more than the heavily buffed agility of the Summoner. 1.6 seconds may not sound like much, but consider that if your enemy wasn't looking at you at first, it takes him at least a second to react, turn his torso your way, aim, and fire. If you're really only exposed for 1.6 seconds, you end up winning a lot of trades simply because the enemy doesn't have enough time to shoot back at you, or he doesn't have a big enough target to shoot at. Now give the enemy 3.3 seconds and more surface area, as in the case of the Summoner, and it can easily turn to you, fire a laser burn, and finish it completely. A more dangerous mech like the Madcat Mark II-B can put out up to 60 points of damage within that 1.6 second difference. If they're carrying spread weapons like LBX, MRMs, and SRMs, the Hellbringer is largely undercover by the time the laser burn is done, and any return fire will hit rocks. Whereas a summoner will still have enough surface area exposed for those spread weapons to do most of their damage. This clip that I'm showing you now demonstrates what I mean in a real game. The Annihilator is a very dangerous mech when you're face to face with it, but the Battlemaster is able to avoid much of the return fire by taking advantage of its high mounted lasers. In the engagement with the Blood Asp, we can see how we can get free damage by striking when the enemy was not prepared to return fire in my direction. The low and wide arm mounts don't only affect hill peaks, but side peaks as well. For example, some players like Hellbringer builds with additional firepower beyond the 6 head and torso mounted energy weapons can give, so they start using arm mounts. But the arm mounts are low and somewhat far from the cockpit, so is using them worth it? In this demo, I do another side-by-side comparison of two peaks, one using the torso mounted weapons only, and one using both arm and torso weapons. Syncing the video to where the exposure time starts. In this case, the side peak without the arm mounts takes 2.8 seconds, and with the arm mounts, it takes an extra 0.8 seconds. This might not seem like a big difference at first, but it could mean taking a full or partial laser burn, or for an enemy you Act 10 to cool down and fire again. Also consider that the Hellbringer's arms aren't that wide and the mech isn't that slow. The difference would be more pronounced on slow assault mechs with wider arms like the Corsair or the Kodiak. In summary, hardpoint locations is one of the biggest factors in making a mech good or not, because it allows the mech to avoid or minimize return fire. PGI knows this, which is why it often gives mechs with bad hardpoint locations durability quirks. But even the biggest structure or armor quirks get negated with one bad trade. And over the course of the game, mechs with good hardpoint locations, when played with skill and good builds, will always win out. What about DPS boosting quirks like heat gen and cooldown? Well, it depends on your build. If you're intending to make high alpha peaks, then DPS doesn't matter as much since you're often taking one shot and getting back to cover. If you're making a high phase time build, then the extra DPS could be of some significance. But generally speaking, compared to a mech with better hardpoints, those quirks are still not worth giving up the opportunity to take little to no return fire. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video and please share this with other players if you think it may help them. I have a playlist of MWO strategy videos like this one, which I will link in the description below, so do check it out if you're new to the game or just want to get better. Also make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one, and I'll see you next time.